You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. I am joined currently by Kathleen Kirkpatrick, the Executive Director of Hometown Action. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us. Still on mute.
Yeah. So, hey, I'm actually the political director and
political director. Okay. Sorry about that.
Organizer for Hometown Action. Our executive director is Justin Best.
Okay. Gotcha. Sorry about that.
No
so we wanted to talk to you because you came out, and I think some other folks from Hometown Action did maybe, but I know for sure that you did, to support the Amazon workers on Saturday during their rally, and I'm sure that y'all have offered your support in other capacities, and y'all are welcome to help, or y'all are open to helping in the future should they need it. Why are y'all invested in this campaign? Like, what is it about this campaign, these workers potentially organizing, that made y'all want to support in whatever way that you can?
Well, we generally support unionization because we know it's important to provide better workplace conditions, better pay, better benefits, and better conditions in general for workers and also their communities at large. In this particular effort to unionize at the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, is getting a lot of national attention, and rightly so. We know that Alabama is a strong union state, although not a lot of people necessarily realize that, because southern states are also right to work states. But we think that this effort to unionize in Bessemer at the Amazon warehouse is getting attention for some good reasons to really educate people in Alabama. Y'all are doing a great job at Valley Labor Report of getting information out there about just what the unions do and, the basic principles and information for unions, because I think, a lot of folks have sort of lost touch with what the unions are really all about and need to hear it for themselves. So thank you for doing that. But I came up from Montgomery. We felt like it was important to get out and show solidarity and stand with workers at the rally on Saturday, despite the lousy weather conditions. And we're happy to be there.
Yeah, no kidding about those lousy weather conditions. That was awful. I really wanted to do something like this that Saturday outside before and after the rally, but it was so bad that it was all that we could do to get set up to live stream from the rally. And then as soon as it was over, I was like, I do not want to be here 1 second longer than I have to be. So we packed up and left as soon as it was over. I didn't get to, and we couldn't, there's no way that we would have gotten anybody to stay and hang out with us in the cold anyway. So having to do everything via Zoom mostly today instead.
Well, despite the nasty conditions, people really came from all over the state, and I was happy to see that folks were interested and determined to show up despite the conditions, even in smaller numbers than we might have liked. But there were a lot of great folks there, and some really terrific handmade signs, some a little more organized and printed. But it was a strong showing of support, I think, for what's going on in Bessemer, and I'm pretty confident there's going to be a good outcome for all of this.
Yeah, I agree completely. And you mentioned from all over the state. Not only from all over the state, from all over the South. There was people there from Atlanta, people there from Louisiana, yes, people there from Florida. It's really amazing kind of the diversity of support that these workers have from around the state and from around the South and around the country. And, the fact that we had 150 people or so in just such terrible conditions. There's no telling how many folks that we would have had if it had been a nice day.
Very true. And I don't know about you, but I'm hearing from friends and colleagues all over the country, all over the world, actually, asking about, hey, is this really happening, and why in Alabama? And I take every opportunity to talk it up, because I know that we can do this in Alabama. I know how important it is to workers here to take this step at Amazon and Bessemer, and it's going to encourage folks all over the state. So it's an important step. We want to be involved. And, as grassroots community organizers in rural areas, we know that in Hometown Action, we know that a lot of the manufacturing and warehouse facilities are in rural areas. Rural people work at facilities like the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, and may travel, well over an hour to get there because there aren't jobs in their local communities. So this is something that affects rural folks, not just the urban areas in Alabama, like in Birmingham and Bessemer.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. There's so many people that depend on this facility for a job, and there's so many people whose lives are going to be directly made better if these folks are able to win the union.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what Hometown Action does. Can you talk to us about some of y'all's projects and some of the things that y'all have kind of led on?
Certainly. And it's a young organization. We've only been around since December of 2017, and our small staff of 3, 2 of us came on board full time just last year. So we're a young and rapidly growing organization. We really do focus primarily on rural issues, but let's face it, Alabama is a rural state. And in the last year or so, we've done a lot of get out the vote efforts associated with making sure that folks, for instance, knew that they had the option to vote by mail or to vote early in person in the 2020 election, because we know that folks are concerned about their health and they're concerned about voting during the pandemic. But it's also an opportunity to educate them about their voting rights and other concerns, and have conversations with them about their issues in their local communities. And one of the ways that we did that was through mass texting. We texted over 1 million voters in just a few short weeks right before the election in November, to have conversations with them about, what are your needs? Are you concerned about the pandemic? How do you plan to vote? And when I say how do you plan to vote, I mean, do you plan to vote in person at the polls or by other means? Like an absentee ballot this year. I mean, not who they were going to vote for, but we want to find out more about what's affecting the people in rural communities in Alabama, because we know they're struggling. The pandemic has just amplified the issues that are already there. We are developing a climate mitigation and climate disaster response program with my colleague, our lead organizer, Warren Tidwell, who's also been on Valley Labor Report. So thanks very much for that. Warren leads our mutual aid efforts and a lot of our on-the-ground organizing. We provided cloth reusable face masks to thousands of workers in Alabama. We made a concerted effort to respond to some very dire needs in some of the meatpacking plants in Alabama, and also in immigrant communities in East Alabama, where folks were not able to readily get PPE early on during the pandemic, and we've continued to do so. We're also doing some anti-racism work that we're gearing up for our distributed organizing program. Distributed organizing being using methods in addition to like organizing on the ground in person, but using techniques like mass texting, doing deep canvassing by phone to really listen and find out what people in Alabama's rural communities are concerned about, and help them find solutions by building power in their own local communities, much like unions do in a workplace. That's the sort of organizing work that we do in small towns and rural communities.
Right. That deep canvassing that you were talking about, that really listening to folks, that's what a good union organizer does. I mean, that's the Huntsville IWW, I'm a member of the IWW, you can see on my shirt. We had our organizer training 101 in January. Kathleen, you were a part of it as well. And that was, that was one of the things that they really stressed is like, you need to, and it needs to come from a place of like, you actually care, because like workers are people and they're not stupid. You know, they can tell if you like don't actually care about their lives and about helping them to help themselves. But you know, in a good union organizer, you're going to have people that really listen to you know, the concerns of the other workers that they're wanting to talk to. I mean, the 80-20 rule is what they told us in the IWW training. You know, you want to be listening 80% of the time and only talking 20% of the time. And, you know, so it's really cool that y'all are kind of implementing a similar thing with your community organizing.
Yeah, there's so much power in working together with other people. Yeah, I think we've all heard you know, misery loves company. It's not always about misery. It's about action. Workers know what their issues are and they know what needs to happen if they can work with others to work together, build power, as we like to say, to really force solutions where there's not an easy pathway. And by working collectively, you know, there's strength in numbers to go to whoever the decision makers are. And better yet, I mean, I, you know, as political director, have an interest in making sure that, you know, people understand that, for instance, they can run for office, you know, in the union fight, you know, get involved with the union and become a union leader. You learn how to work your way up through the ranks and represent other folks like you, rather than relying on someone else who's, you know, seen as already being authoritative or in power to represent you. You know, represent folks like yourself,
right?
And get involved and take charge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, that's exactly right. You know, what the best union leaders were often. Or almost exclusively, they came up off the shop floor. I mean, one of Big Bill Haywood, he was a really big union leader. I believe he was one of the founders of the IWW. He came off of the shop floor. And one of the things that he's known for saying is that I've never read Marx's Capital, but I've got the marks of capital on my back. You know, and so and so people like that, you know, real life folks, just normal everyday workers, like there's so much there that they can do to transform their lives and their workplaces and their communities. And organizations like Hometown Action and unions and DSA, in my opinion, are really good at showing people their potential and showing them what kind of change is possible.
Yeah, and the other, you know, aspect I would say with unions, and, you know, not to get into politics, but, you know, there's people from all walks of life, and, you know, a great deal of variety of opinions on a number of issues. But when there is one big thing like better working conditions, or, you know, a particular issue like healthcare that you have in common, you know, work together for those things. And very oftentimes what happens, you'll also begin to learn that there are other areas that you can work together on. You may not completely agree on every last aspect of a solution, but you're all moving in the same direction and you can get more things accomplished that way. So, you know, collective action organizing is important. Listening is such a big piece of it, as you said, and understanding what the needs are. It's easy to sort of fly in and think you know what the solutions are, but, you know, building power, you know, whether through unionization or community organizing, is really all about, you know, working together to find the solutions for real people, and not just assuming that you can take some stock off the shelf you know, recommendation and implement it anywhere. You need to really look at those place-based needs that are particular to your situation. And that takes working with and listening to the people that are on the ground in those conditions.
Right. Yeah. You know, the fact that, unions really work with people kind of across the ideological spectrum to bring them together for a common project. I think that's a really important aspect. And today, we've kind of had a certain amount of ideological conformity. There's been a lot of progressives and socialists and things like that. But like, you can't have a good fighting union in the South if you don't have conservatives in it. And like David and I, and I know that the brother in the IBEW who came on, and we've got the business manager for the iron workers coming on after you. They've got conservatives in their union, and they've got to talk to them, and they've got to work with them, and each union is going to kind of incorporate this kind of stuff a little bit differently. It's going to look a little bit different. And then, going kind of to the opposite end of the spectrum, but digging into the history of this area, but still touching on the fact about how local communities can kind of interpret different things differently. I mentioned it earlier in the stream that back in the Depression era, the Communist Party actually had more dues-paying members than the NAACP, and they weren't like white yuppies; they were black sharecroppers, and the Alabama Communist Party was actually really unique in that sense, and they were kind of not. It was interesting how, if you read the history about the Alabama Communist Party, how not swayed they were by national and international kind of political feuds. It was like, okay, whatever, if that's what you want to say, that's fine. But like, we want to make our lives better. And that's what communism and socialism means to us. And we're going to do that in our local communities. And so, there's a whole lot of threads there that you laid out that I think are really important for the work that we're doing here in the labor movement, and as left socialist type folks, as, left-wing political organizations, and as students of history that we really need to, that we have to engage in if we're going to do good work in the South.
And, the South has such a rich history, some of which is not as well known. I'd never heard about, what you were just mentioning about, NAACP and the Communist Party in the South and Alabama. But, a lot of our small rural communities were company towns originally. They grew up around, a sawmill or an agricultural operation. And so that connection between rural organizers and unions, I think, is a natural fit. And one of the reasons, again, why we really see value in standing alongside the union organizers and this effort, current effort in Alabama and over the long haul too. It's how we got to know y'all, the Valley Labor Report.
Mm-hmm. There was a governor somewhere that's like wanting to bring company towns back. Did you see that?
Nevada.
Yeah.
Or
it's a Democrat,
Nevada, as they say it out there. Yeah, it's wild, and I'm just beginning to learn about that.
Yeah, it's a Democrat that's wanting to do that. And so, like, we've got our like kind of political ideologies, and David and I and you do, but like, man, screw Democrats. Like, good grief.
Democrat, Republican, whatever. I mean, that's just a really boneheaded move, if you ask me.
Seriously, I mean, he's wanting to set it up so that companies can set up towns and collect taxes and create their own laws. I mean, he wants to set it up where companies can incorporate counties, and they would be like the county board, and it's just insane.
Form their own local governments. And I mean, as I think I used to live in Oregon, and it immediately reminded me of when the Rajneeshis tried to buy their way into a town and take over local politics in a community in Oregon. I mean, it's a fascinating case study of how easy really it can be to completely take over a local government. And as much as we need some change in a lot of our communities, I don't think that's a healthy way to do it.
Right.
So let's work together. But yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, and it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. We actually have a sister organization that's also affiliated with a national organization called People's Action in Nevada. I'm very curious to see how they respond to that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you'll keep us in the loop on that and let us know what they do. Kathleen, do you have any closing thoughts?
Please, anybody out there listening, if you know workers at the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, please encourage them to vote yes, to unionize. And if you want to learn more about unions, you are in the right place listening to Jacob and David at Valley Labor Report. We support the show, encourage you to as well. And check out Hometown Action. We're at hometownaction.org. And you'll find me there and have ways to contact us, and also our sister organization, Hometown Organizing Project, which is online at hometownorganizing.org. I appreciate the opportunity to hang out and chat with y'all this evening.
All right. Thanks, Kathleen. I appreciate it.